Hello, and welcome to this short presentation on ThinManager. My name is Keith Jones with Rockwell Automation. I work for the ThinManager group. What I want to cover today in this overview is a little bit of a history, why ThinManager came into being, what it is, the benefits of Thin Clients, how it works, and review the business case for ThinManager, how you can justify a return on investment using ThinManager within your organization. For people already familiar with ThinManager, I'm going to give a short video presentation on ThinManager 13, the latest release. First of all, a short history. ThinManager began life with a company known as ACP, Automation Control Products, back in the late 1990s, who were doing a lot of work at the time as a system integrator with the then fledgling terminal services. As we were doing these jobs, we decided there's a lot of infrastructure, configuration and overhead that doesn't add value to the end of the job. So we thought about it. We thought there's a better way to do this. So we invested, we became a product company, and ThinManager was released first of all in the late 1990s. So it has a history and a pedigree behind it. We were acquired by Rockwell in 2016. So we've been with Rockwell now for many years. The reason I do that short introduction in history is just to emphasize ThinManager is designed and built from the ground up for the needs of an automation environment. It's not a product that's found in banks, schools, things like that. It is a product that delivers functionality and features that we need in our manufacturing and automation environments. Just a few customers here that you'll probably be familiar with globally. Not to say that really we've got a lot of customers, but really what ThinManager is about, automation, and it's agnostic to the sphere or the industry in which you find it. I'll find you a ThinManager reference in just about any industry on the planet. So, what is ThinManager? Well, I won't read this slide. But it's a configuration and management tool. It's software that enables us to easily manage and put together an infrastructure delivering content to thin client devices, to mobile devices in a secure and reliable manner. We know that bad things happen. We know systems crash, networks break. One of ThinManager's roles is that when something bad happens, we still deliver the content the user needs to his device. If necessary, we can do that within a second of the system failure being detected. So by content delivery and management, what I really mean is ThinManager provides a configuration from the ground floor up, from your devices, and manages those devices from a centralized location. And by content, typically content is delivered as an application, such as an HMI, but it can be any application. Not just an HMI, it can be a maintenance app, it can be Microsoft Excel, or even a full desktop. Content can come from different sources, like servers, panel view servers, VNC servers. Content can also be originated from other ThinManager devices, using shadowing, where I can place on any screen anywhere in my infrastructure a real-time copy of any other screen anywhere else in my plant. Web content can be delivered, and video content, feeds from IP cameras or locally connected USB cameras. And we deliver that content in 4 distinct ways. First of all, we deliver it to devices, thin clients or zero clients, mobile devices like iPads, Surface tablets, Android tablets. Next, we can deliver it to a user or by user role. Somebody in maintenance will need different information than a supervisor, and we can determine who they are and give them the right content when they request it. Next, and fairly uniquely, ThinManager can deliver by location. It can understand where you are in your infrastructure and deliver you the content you need. A manager can be walking from line 1 to line 2. As he approaches line 2, we give him the KPIs of that particular piece of equipment. A maintenance person can scan a QR code on a motor and get the documentation he needs to maintain that motor. And lastly, and newer in version 13, we can deliver by events. an event inside my application or any event that can be triggered and notified to ThinManager. And we can deliver a wide variety of content and trigger on a variety of actions. So why do we do this? I just put up a schematic here of a typical manufacturing operation where I have a plant floor. I may have a control room, I may have engineering offices as well. In each of those locations I've got computers, and of course on each computer I've got an operating system, I've got the application software that's doing the work, I've got support software, I've also got vulnerabilities, moving parts, disks and fans, and security vulnerabilities, access points. As I multiply that across my infrastructure, that becomes a significant maintenance hurdle. In ThinManager's world, we do things a little bit differently. The infrastructure is still there, but first of all, we can remove the computers from a vulnerable area, place them in a server room. We then manage the content from that server room using ThinManager, delivering it to thin client devices, mobile devices, or endpoint devices that are suitable for the location and environment in which they're located. And in a summary slide, although this is a little bit noisy, stuff in red needs to get to stuff in green. ThinManager is the tool that enables the configuration of that delivery. It's not the tool that does the delivery, it isn't a bottleneck, but enables the devices to have the intelligence and information they need to get the content securely and reliably delivered to their users. So I've mentioned thin, and I've also dropped the word in zero clients. To me, I use the two words interchangeably, but a zero client or a thin client to me is a device with no operating system whatsoever, not even an embedded operating system, has no firmware. Typically, they're very industrial robust if they're going out in a plant, small footprint, and much longer life than a traditional PC. Rockwell, of course, has got a great range of devices that you can choose from, starting at the left-hand side there on the VersaView 5200, which is a single display unit, enabling you to deliver a one monitor screen to a user, through panels that can have multiple displays, through dual display, and to the right-hand side, our flagship device with up to 7 4K monitors in an industrial form factor. And new in our latest range, the VersaView 6300, the first release from a company who acquired ASM, the 6300T is a very powerful unit in a palm-sized box. It will deliver the ability to show a 4K screen with multiple network interfaces in a reliable and highly configurable industrial unit. Okay, so how does ThinManager work? Well, from the user's perspective, the stuff in red, the thin client device powers on, something happens, and the applications are in front of him. Behind the scenes, of course, there's a lot more things going on. First of all, when the thin client does power on, because it has no intelligence, it must find a boot source. Either if it's what we call a ThinManager ready device, it has an IP address of a ThinManager server in there, or if it's an off-the-shelf open market device, it will boot using a standard network protocol called PXE or PXE. Regardless, ThinManager server must be running and the device contacts it. Once ThinManager has got the contact request, it sends in a small payload of firmware into the device. This is the ThinManager operating system, and it's delivered into the RAM of the device at boot time. It takes about 45-50 seconds. Next, as ThinManager recognizes the specific device in the system, it delivers the specific content that might be needed. For example, touchscreen drivers, the number of monitors it's got, the layout on those screens of the application that it needs, even containers that can be delivered into the thin client to do local work. Once that happens, the thin client's on its own. Even if ThinManager goes away at this point, the device will carry on working fine. Then the thin client goes to the servers it needs to contact, requests the session to be started, and the content that's needed is delivered from a remote desktop server to the thin client device. With ThinManager, we always have the ability to configure two ThinManager servers. Remember, if a Thin client needs to boot, it must find a ThinManager server. If the ThinManager server is offline, it will stay there until one becomes available. So we can have two servers that are synchronized. So if the primary is offline, the replica server will be used to boot the Thin client device. We also enable failover. Regardless of redundancy, failover is multiple sources for my content. So if my HMI is running on server RDS1 and server RDS1 goes offline, I can fail over to server RDS2 and get the same content. As we get a little bit more fancy, we talk about multi-session and tiling. Multi-session is more than one content type, more than one application, more than one source of information delivered to a terminal. So I could have a few HMIs from different servers. I could have a panel view. I can tile those on the screens automatically if I need, so that I can see them all at the same time. If one screen isn't enough, I can add multiple screens to my system. So a Thin client can have as many screens as video ports it will support, and ThinManager will enable you to configure those. So here's an example with a few more clients, including a video feed and a vantage point. Next, virtual screening enables me to take a screen but split it up into segments any way that I like. It's similar to tiling, but I can configure the layout as I prefer. So this screen here has got 4 segments. If I click in one of the right hand segments, it's configured that application switches into the main and then can be interactive with. Notice we're doing scaling. ThinManager will manage the screen scaling automatically for you. With ThinManager 12, we introduced the ability to host a container object inside the Thin client device itself. So these objects which are delivered with ThinManager, today we have browsers like Firefox and Chrome and containers for Citrix. Those are introduced into the Thin client at boot time. They run natively in the Thin client, so they don't require any server resources, and they do require a Thin client with good CPU capability, and we do recommend an 8 GB of RAM to run these containers. Next we can have user-based content. So here a user logs onto the screen using ThinManager. The credentials that user has gives them the ability to have other application software available to them. We can do multi-factor authentication with card readers, fingerprint readers, etc. With location-based mobility, we manage the mobile devices in the same way as Thin clients in ThinManager, but we resolve somebody's location using one of 4 technologies. A manual resolution with a QR code is simply just that. Engineer, for example, with a tablet, scans a QR code on the PLC and gets the ACP file opened in logic in relation to that device. We can also use passive devices, GPS if you can see the sky, but more not usually Wi-Fi access points. As you move from one point to another in your process, you will connect to a different access point. And if you want more granular resolution, Bluetooth beacons can be used to create a geofence. So if I walk within 2 meters of an equipment and I'm an operator, I can operate that equipment. If I go away from that equipment, then I cannot operate that equipment. And here's a QR code on a drive getting scanned, and you'll see the content that that operator needs from that. And lastly, event-based content delivery. We can do various things when events happen. They can be alarms or any other things happening in our application. We use an ActiveX control typically in an application which need not be factory talk view, but when we can do things like adding a display client. So in this example, somebody walks through a security fence around a piece of equipment. We can put a video feed to show what's exactly happening up on a screen in the control room. So let's look why people buy ThinManager. What is the business justification and the return on investment that ThinManager can deliver? I'm going to look are the benefits from 5 different perspectives here. First of all, reliability. By taking computers away from a production environment where they can be easily damaged and fail, and moving them to central locations, central servers, maybe even virtualized machines, I'm reliably increasing the processing capability. I've also got ThinManager's ability to failover in case a server does crash. And I'm replacing the units on the plant with solid-state industrial hardware. I use 3 to 5 years as a ballpark figure of a lifetime of a PC on a plant, 7 to 10 years for a thin client out there. Control. I'm enabling configuration of everything from my centralized desktop and from my office. So I can install ThinManager, I can install my applications once on servers and use them as many times as I need. I deploy those applications out to the thin clients, to people who are authorized to see them. I do not typically deploy a full desktop. We don't need a start menu. We don't need the operators interacting with an operating system. We just need them in front of the HMI. I can shadow terminals. So if an operator's got a problem, calls me up and he's a mile away, I can have a copy of his screen brought to mine. I can see what he's doing, what he's typing, where his mouse is, and I can talk him through that problem without even leaving my desk. I can manage everything within the ThinManager interface and get real-time feedback on the status of everything without having to get up. Security, of course, is a big thing. I can easily configure the access for users based on credentials from Active Directory or stored inside ThinManager. Typically, I don't want the users to see system-level credentials. I might still want them to log on, and we can enable that. There's no hard drive on a thin client. If it is stolen, it becomes a brick, and there's no intellectual property, no algorithms, licenses, software, databases, etc. And if I did walk up to a ThinManager thin client with a USB key label full of viruses and plug it in, absolutely nothing would happen. It's not even a part of the network infrastructure in that manner. Energy. We all want to reduce our carbon footprint. ThinManager does enable that. I use an example of a control room with 20 PCs at 100 watts each. So you've got 2 kilowatts of power, 2 kilowatts of cooling, 2 kilowatts of UPS. You could replace that control room using thin client devices and have a much more versatile, flexible configuration using 10 to 15% of the energy. But the big payback comes from the ongoing operational management. There's typically a lot fewer systems to operate and maintain. Instead of 25 or 50 computers out in the plant, I've just got a few servers in my server room. If I do need to patch things, instead of going to 50 computers individually where I'd have to put the patch on and possibly do it at a friendly time for the process if it needed a reboot, I just go to ThinManager and I select a server and I click a box to take it offline. Remember, when a server goes offline, ThinManager still delivers the content from a backup source. I patch that server, test it, and boot it as many times as I like, then click a box, put it back in service, and rinse and repeat on the other machines. Thin clients themselves are completely maintenance free. I can dual run systems if I like, so I can have multiple HMIs on the same screen if I'm doing a failover or a system replacement. And then even if a thin client does fail, it's very easy to replace. This is an example of a real customer of mine in South Africa. Very messy plant, made a very fine powder, it got everywhere. 50 computers with a lifetime of 2 years, so every fortnight a computer would fail. When that device failed, an engineer had to get a new computer from stores. He had to install an OS or an image. Regardless, it would be out of date. He'd have to bring it up to patch level, update everything, take it to where the failed unit was, replace it in situ, test it out and put it back online. That was an 8-hour job for an engineer. And of course, while that's been going on, the process is working at a reduced efficiency. If a thin client does fail, first of all, it can be rapidly replaced by a technician, not an engineer. Technician gets a new one from stores, takes it to where the failed unit is, removes the cables from the dead one, plugs it into the new one and powers it on. ThinManager will then detect a unit it's never seen and it will say, what do you want to do? You'll tell ThinManager you're reconnecting the session, which will be there in a list. ThinManager will remember that. It will reinstate the running applications back to the user. So 10-15 minutes to replace the Thin client, and even during that time, although the operator's been blind, the applications have continued to run on the servers, doing historizing, doing processing, etc. So now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Nick Putman, who's the product manager for ThinManager, for a short video on the new features and functionality in ThinManager 13.0.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to present the ThinManager 13 features. My name is Nick Putman. I'm our product manager of the solution, and I'll spend just a few minutes walking through some of the enhancements that have been made in the ThinManager version 13 platform. We'll categorize these as we usually do into 4 main categories: productivity, visualization, mobility, and security. I'd like to take just a few minutes to walk through each one of these categories, and I'll spend a few minutes demonstrating those capabilities to you in the product itself. First, I'd like to introduce to you the REST API for ThinManager. The API itself will enable partial backups and restores of the system database, our ability to commission ThinManager at scale, as well as our ability to validate some of the IT standards or other industrial standards that we may like to try to adhere to from site to site. The API will have the capability for you to query all information and gives you the capability to set or completely configure the product without ever having to launch the user interface. We'll spend some time here demonstrating what the API looks like and the capabilities in the product. A few other things on the productivity side that we'd like to talk through are the database health check, support for cookies in our web browser containers, sound being adopted in container images, as well as a change to our patch process. So the changes to the patch process will be such that there is no longer the requirement to maintain or uninstall the service and reinstall the service. What that means for our customers is you'll no longer be prompted for user credentials when patching the software. This will be a more traditional patch process moving forward. So I will kind of jump into the software itself. I've got my version 13 ThinManager system here running. Again, very excited to present to you the API. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch the web browser. It's one-way web browser just on my desktop. It's one of the ways that I can access the API. I can utilize the API with whichever tool is most comfortable and familiar to me. That could be using it could be using PowerShell. In this case, I'm going to use our documentation, which is here in a Swagger instance, will be pre-configured and preloaded for you. All you'll need to do is hit your ThinManager server IP address, and then hit the port, followed by API and documentation to complete the URL. That's how we can access the API. That port is configurable, so before I demonstrate the API, I'll show you where that gets turned on. First and foremost, I'll launch the ThinManager server configuration wizard. I will find on about the 7th page of the wizard that I now have the capability to enable the API. I can enable API endpoints, so that will turn the API on. I can also allow users to log in. There are 2 ways that we can authenticate the API for use: with system keys and with user keys. System keys are managed here through the ThinManager server configuration wizard. I can manage those keys. I could generate a new system key. When I generate the key, I give that a logical name. I select manually which permissions I want that key to have. Do I want to allow connections? Do I want to allow users to be created with the API? Do I want to allow events to be scheduled? I can create all of these independent, or I can select all of the permissions from which I'm interested. And then when I generate the key will be shown here at the bottom. Note that this is the only time this key will be displayed. So should you want to use this key or deliver this key or reuse it, you'll need to copy that key and store it for safekeeping. So I can use this key. I'll go ahead and copy this so we have it for future. There's also the user keys, which I'll demonstrate through the web interface with Swagger. So again, I have the ability to manage, revoke, or extend keys from this location. But now that we know the API has been enabled, I'm going to jump back to the web browser interface. The first thing that I would need to do in order to be able to interface with ThinServer via the API is I do need to authenticate, or I need to authorize myself as a valid user here in the API. I did just generate a key, so I could use that to authorize myself. Instead, let's go ahead and take a look at what it looks like to authorize as a user. So I'm going to drop down the login endpoint. I'm going to expand that out, and I'm going to hit the try it out button. In order to try that out, I'm going to need to put in my username and password. Now note here that I am being given the syntax for this particular parameter. So if I wanted to log in with one of my known users, I'm on a ThinManager demo kit today. I could use the lab user, lab LOC, and I would have to put in my credentials. Again, make sure you're only doing this with credentials that only you have visibility to. I'm going to go ahead and execute. I've now generated an API key. This API key has inherited all of the permissions that were already assigned to the lab user in ThinManager. So now that I've generated that key, I can authorize the rest of the endpoints. I'm now authorized in this web instance. I'm now authorized to go start interacting with the API. You'll see that there is a vast amount of information and capability within the API itself. This is where all the documentation exists. We could start with a very simple example, for example, getting the system uptime without having to go into the user interface to retrieve such a thing. Again, I could always try this out and execute the sample code that's there for me, and I'll see that my system has been up for 36 minutes. That's a get variable, or a get parameter. So I can get all the system information. I could also look to set information with a put. So I could use the put command. We could use a very simple example here where I could try this out. And let's say I wanted to set the licensing mode of ThinManager. If I look in my system at the current moment and I looked at licensing mode, I'll see that it's set as ThinManager master licensing. Should I want to change that remotely, I could set that to factory talk activation. I could execute, and I would be able to change the mode of my software from this point. So we could see the ease of the documentation and what that's providing for us. There's obviously more complicated examples or more in-depth examples. We could look at getting all of the system settings or the different system attributes. What are our syslog settings? Do I want to allow the creation of users? What are the permissions associated with my ThinManager server? Who has which permissions? Again, I could change the ports, completely be able to configure my system all without ever having to launch the ThinManager user interface. This will be especially valuable when you want to take and reuse certain components of a configuration from one facility to the next, from one line to another, or you're at a centralized location and want to validate your IT standards, such as DNS and PXE settings, across a large enterprise of installations. So that's a brief overview of the REST API. A few of the other productivity type features that we had talked about were the database health check. That can also be found in the ThinManager server configuration wizard. If I look on the database management page, I will be able to run the database integrity check. Simple tool, I'll be able to find that there were no errors in my database. Oftentimes when there is adverse behavior within the product, one of the things that our engineering team will do is they will look to see if there are any misalignments within the database itself. So this is a tool that will streamline and simplify our ability to support our customers and our resources in the field. With version 12, we launched the capability to deliver web browsers as in the form of a Docker container. And with version 12.1, we launched the ability to take those container images and run them on thin client hardware, reducing the need for server-based infrastructure, reducing the Windows licensing required, and again, simplifying our overall delivery of web-based applications to ThinManager managed thin clients. One of the shortcomings of that release was that when you went to a web page, oftentimes cookies are stored to ease the delivery of revisiting that page. So say we were using a cached credential to access a page and we revisited that page, we're not prompted to enter our credential each and every time. However, because of the power of running everything on the device, when we restart or power cycle a Thin client, all of that information would have been lost. With version 13, one of the capabilities that you have now on the Chrome or Firefox or any one of the Citrix container display clients is that you will be able to select that you want to preserve the browser cookies. By selecting this box, we will take the cookies and store them in our database so that next time that container is recreated on the Thin client, we'll pass the cookies back to that device. And again, really simplifying your productivity on the floor when leveraging our container technology. Additionally to containers, we have added support for sound to be passed through an application running a container onto the Thin client device. Pivoting back to our release summary, I'd now like to highlight the visualization. There's another key component of the version 13 release, which I'm excited to highlight, is something we're calling event-based content delivery. If we think about the delivery mechanisms from ThinManager in the past, we have always highlighted that we could deliver capabilities based on 3 unique delivery mechanisms. With version 13, that moves to 4 unique delivery mechanisms: by device, by user, by location, and now by event. We'll take a look at what that really means and the power that adds for us. I think it really completes our capability to deliver the right information to the right person at the right place at the right time. Really kind of rounding out our ability to reduce your total overall cost of ownership. There have been some minor changes to the interface, as well as we've added some canned virtual screen layouts. I would, however, like to also demonstrate for you the event-based content delivery. So I'm going to return to my demonstration here. I'm going to select one of my terminals that has a FactoryTalk USE application running. We'll use that to demonstrate our 13 capabilities with event-based content delivery. Before I do, I'm going to take a look at the ThinManager events, which can be found in the tree on the left-hand side. I'm going to select ThinManager events, and I'm going to take a look at a few that I've already created. The first that we'll leverage is the demo event on and demo event off. When we create an event, what we're looking to do is to create an expression driven through the wizard or through the API. We'll give that a property name, and then we'll talk about what the value is that we want to compare that property against. This property can come from any external source. In our example today, we'll have that be a value that we're going to monitor in VueSE, some of which will be controller tags in Logix. I've gotten a few examples here, a very simple example where I've created my logical expression. Next, I have selected the event action. In this case, I'd like to add a display client. Other actions include removing display clients, modifying permissions, toggling the view of the display clients on my Thin client, or even tiling the active display clients. In this case, when I see this event, I would like to add a display client. In this case, I'd like that display client to be the desktop. For the first example, I have created again, kind of the hello world, very simple example, which is a push button in FactoryTalk USE. We'll monitor the state of that push button, and when that push button is selected, we're going to trigger an event, and we're going to deliver the application which we specified in the ThinManager event, demo event on, which was the desktop. I have a correlating demo event off, and would be another push button that I could select, and that will remove the desktop from this experience. To modify the event action, I could simply come into ThinManager, select yet a different application or a different display client that I wanted to deliver. I could return to my terminal. And because I'm monitoring this event, I'm not using this button to deliver a specific display client. I'm monitoring the event that is this button. When I now select that button, I would be able to deliver whatever display client is associated with the event. Maybe more impactful would be to have events that are not manually triggered, something that we're looking at so we can deliver the right information to the right person at the right place at the right time. One possible thing that we could look at would be to monitor the value of a tag within a controller. In this case, I may find it useful to be able to deliver a camera stream, for example, to an operator when we see maybe a motor running higher than we would expect. In this simple example, I'm going to monitor the rotations per minute of the current the motor that we have running, and whenever that's running, I'm going to go ahead and deliver another application, which in this case is a camera stream of the facility, and when it's not running, I'm going to remove that camera stream. So again, maybe a bit of a simple example here, but hopefully demonstrating the power and the capability of having these automated applications be able to deliver information to our operators. Think of being able to deliver a camera stream when you've broken the light curtain of a safety perimeter around a machine, or even being able to deliver other critical information when an alarm is triggered. So again, more to kind of come on that subject throughout the calendar year, but again, wanted to give you an idea of just how easy it is to set these up and what the value that can bring to ThinManager is. We'll quickly toggle back to our release summary, and I would like to just briefly walk through mobility. We have added sound redirection for the mobile clients for iOS and Android platforms. We've adopted the ability for custom certificates to be enabled for the web browser container display clients. Again, kind of furthering that technology and taking the feedback from our customers that not all certificates are public. Sometimes they are custom generated. ThinManager is now adopted in the Rockwell Automation Firewall utility. This is the Windows configuration utility that you'll find installed with many of your FactoryTalk products. This will simplify your deployments and allow for configuration of all of the ports that are required for ThinManager automatically by running that tool. Last but not least, we have added support for Secure Boot. This is a technology that surrounds the boot process for the Thin client hardware. This will be supported on a wide variety of our Thin client offerings, starting with the OSM, the AV OSM and the 6300 Thin client offerings. Those will now leverage the Secure Boot technology, kind of enhancing and moving us forward. I hope you've helped this and found this useful. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the team, and we look forward to your feedback on ThinManager version 13.
So great video there from Nick. So from me, I'd just like to summarize a few things about ThinManager and then give you some ideas of where you can get more resources. Remember, ThinManager is built for automation. It's designed for our manufacturing environments. It enables a secure OT solution, and we're reducing a reliance on IT because of managing it with our OT people. It's very straightforward to deploy and manage, and it's the only end-to-end solution that does everything from the hardware on the plant floor, the thin clients, the mobile devices, through the security, through the applications and the servers. Everything is managed with ThinManager. We have a very flexible license model enabling you to pick licenses to suit your organization and your infrastructure. And we've got a great ecosystem behind ThinManager. With ThinManager, we can deliver quantifiable benefits, reliable, secure, and ongoing management cost savings. If you need more information, first place is your NHP representative, but also the ThinManager.com website is a great repository of all things ThinManager.
And thank you everyone for joining us today for the ThinManager presentation. Unfortunately, Keith Jones, due to personal commitments, can't be with us today. So instead, you've got myself. I'm Hayden Farragut from NHP. I'm the product manager for the software and networks portfolio. And we also have Dean Tressiter, the business lead for the software and control. So we'll be answering any questions you would like to throw in the chat. We've had a couple appear through the sessions, which we'll just get into. So Dean, the first one, could you please explain the licensing model for the purchasing of ThinManager?
Well, yeah, thanks, Hayden. Hello all. Yeah, again, Dean Tresina speaking. Look, yeah, we just want to quickly take you through, if there's a question on the licensing, fundamentally how it works is for every device, you have a ThinManager license. So there's no license for the server. You just have a license for each device that's connected to the ThinManager application. So that could be an iPad, an Android phone, or it could be even a thin client. You saw that with Keith's presentation, up to some of our hardware support for 7 4K monitors. So that would be classed as one device and needing one license. So fundamentally, it's the number of concurrent devices you have connected to ThinManager and receiving content. Even with multi-monitor, that's still only one device that's on that system there as well. I think that answered that question that come through there, Hayden?
Yeah, thanks, Dean. There's another one that's appeared through that answering that question, which I think goes hand in hand a little bit. The question is, how many Windows CAL licenses are required for 2 clients with 4 screens?
How many Windows?
Application question.
Yeah, so how many client access license are required for a device? So client access license is again really matches up to the number of devices you have. So your Windows remote desktop server is really about I'm consuming content from that remote desktop server. So really the number of CAL licenses matches the number of devices you'll be using. Even if it's got 4 screens, it's still using those CAL licenses for that remote access for it as well. So it's a number of devices you're using. So if it's got 2 clients, and I think that's what your Windows CAL license requires there, if I'm reading that correctly, and that's at the side as well. So it's really your CAL licenses match the number of devices you've got connected, I think. Sorry, just to re-simplify it there as well.
Excellent. Thank you once again, Dean. Working our way through them, there's another one here. Can ThinManager run on third-party hardware? That's an interesting question for you.
Well, yeah, if you sort of through Keith's presentation as well. So ThinManager can run on things like the Apple iPad, Android, iPhone. We also have a Windows app, Windows ThinManager client. So it can run on various Windows applications as well. There's also a lot of third parties out there develop ThinManager ready hardware, really for a fit for purpose, and they take into account things like the environment. So a hazardous environment, for example, people produce clients for the hazardous environment. Even the small heads-up displays as well can also have ThinManager ready type of devices, or and alternatively can take advantage of the Android or the Windows app to incorporate and display content using various form factors in those devices. So there's companies out there that also produce ThinManager ready hardware and really about that fit for purpose type of application there.
Thanks, Dean. I appreciate it. The WinTMC client is something that is a very good migration step as well. I've seen that utilised many, many times before they actually go to some hardware thin client as well. So thanks, Dean. We've had another one appear. It's more of an architecture question query. We have 10 ThinManager VFlex licenses. Is there any further licenses to set up and operate the system? I guess this doubles back on the Windows CAL licenses, but I'll hand it over to you to ask there as well, Dean.
Yeah, so if you've got the 10 ThinManager clients, so that's about 10 devices that can run concurrently at any one time and receive content to it as well. There's a couple of other licensing. There's a Windows licensing necessary. So you have your remote desktop server. So that's where the applications are running. So, for example, I'll give you an example with FactoryTalk View. The clients are running on the remote desktop server. ThinManager takes that content and pushes it out to those devices. If you've got multiple Thin clients, I want to run two Windows, the FactoryTalk View clients on the same box. That consumes one device client for ThinManager, which you've got 10, but you also need another, you only need a single Windows CAL license. So that's to do with the Microsoft operating system. Remember, you still need a client license for the application. So FactoryTalk View is a special case in regards to we can display as many clients that hardware will support. So if you've got 4 monitors, you only need a single client license of FactoryTalk View to display 4 instances. So I think, Dan, to actually answer your question, it's just the Windows client access license for those servers. And just many organizations already have an agreement with Microsoft. So if you're a system integrator out there and you're doing some work, just in many cases, there's no additional cost that the end user already has those licenses in place. I think I answered your question there, Dan.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dean. If there's any other questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll get to them. There's another one that's appeared here, Dean. Someone who's watching ThinManager a little bit closer than most, I should say. I have heard of Pinpoint to be released in the future. Is there new features coming that you can advise us of?
Yeah, well, you might have come to Rock Live. It might be a person who's the Rock Live there. So, so we announced at both the US and our Sydney-based Rock Live some new functionality and features that are soon to be released. We're aiming for a December this year release of a product that's really it's based on ThinManager. In very much like we saw that Nick went through with the event. So being able to bring up a display based on a tag or a tag going high, we're now introducing as part of that now if a tag linked to a say FactoryTalk View alarm, we can also bring up what we saw in the Studio 5000 down to the rung level as well, down to the tag level as well. So a use case for this is an alarm might go off, a pump can't start. The system we can bring up on another display using Pinpoint the permissives for that particular pump to start, for example. That's as an example of being able to use the new and upcoming technology of Pinpoint to actually open that ladder code for you down to the pre-configured rung or tag level necessary as well. So it's based on an address or tag. So obviously, if you do editing, it still comes up and brings up that rungs for you as well. So yes, so that's a little bit of what's coming on that. So very much like the eventing, instead of just bringing up a screen, we're actually opening Studio 5000, opening the ACD file, and bringing it down to that particular one. So really, yeah.
Thanks, Dean. It looks very good when I caught it at Rock Live as well. Very, very easy to navigate and help resolve what's happening on your plant floor. Another question's come in while you're answering that one, Dean. Thank you kindly. Is there a patch for ThinManager version 10 that resolves the Microsoft DCOM hardening, or is this version upgrade the only option to move?
I'll have to check now. I believe there's only an upgrade available for. We haven't patched it down to that level. I can check on that because we were bringing out patches for previous versions. I can't remember what we got back to, but 12 or 13 are definitely patched. I can't remember version 10. So that Mark, I can come back to you on that one if you like. I can quickly check our notes. There's a knowledge base document I can find for you. It tells you what version we're going back to, but at the moment, I just know it's 12 and 13. Sorry, Mark, but I don't know off the top of my head with that one.
Excellent. Thanks, Dean. Thanks for all the questions we've had today. We'll hang around a little bit longer for the next couple of minutes. If there's anything else you'd like, please feel free to pop it in the chat. You're welcome. Thank you very much for the kindness in the chat as well. Yeah, feel free to drop it in and we'll just hang out for the next couple of minutes if there's anything further, any other questions.
Sorry there, Mark. We are looking to patch, I just brought up my notes. We're looking to patch 10 and onwards. So we should be bringing out a patch for V10 of ThinManager to address the decom hardening side of it. So the notes are saying, yeah, 10 through to 13, which will be addressing that one. So I'll have to jump on the knowledge base to see if the version 10 patch is released there.
Excellent. Thanks, Dean. Well done. Okay, a couple more questions for you, Dean. Is there any way we can trial ThinManager without purchasing licenses? Good question.
Yeah, so we have our trial before you buy type licensing available to you. You can reach out to your local NHP account manager and they can arrange some temporary activations, as we call them, to trial ThinManager if you like to as well.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. With most Rockwell software products, you can definitely get a 30-day temporary activation to try before you buy, as Dean put it. It's the best way to get hands-on with it. We also have some on-course sessions for the other software range where you can get in there at a virtual server we can spin up for you. Comes partnered with a lab, so you can really get into the deep dive. How does this work? Help me understand it. How do I use it as well? So some pretty cool features.
All right.
Okay, everyone. Well, thanks kindly for your time today. Greatly appreciated as always. This session has been recorded and it will be made available with an email link sent to those who have registered, but also on the NHP YouTube channel in the very near future. So thank you very much. Myself and Dean, feel free to reach out to us if needed. We're local. One last question just stuck in. Just snug in. So yeah, okay with this one, Dean. Can you confirm the stability is suitable for critical control room applications?
Yeah, very much so. It's really designed. It runs on back-end servers, so the remote desktop server side of it. We've got hundreds and thousands of these installs out there in various types of industries. You ought to see from Keith. It's been around a long time. So V13, Rockwell acquired the product, so it's not as if it's a new product for us. Yeah, we've got some very, very long and good runtime out of these applications, and especially designed for control room applications. That's really what it's really fits in well for it. Being able to consolidate that visualization content into a single unit is very good. And really, fundamentally though, is the back-end infrastructure using the Microsoft reporting services, Microsoft remote desktop services, and having clustering of that and being able to really have high availability of that infrastructure really makes it a very stable and a product there for it.
Yeah, spot on, Dean. I'll just add a little bit further to that. So really, to me, it's around the robustness of where your software lives at this point. Traditionally, or historically, I should say, NHP have really partnered with Stratus and Rockwell have too. So we've got high availability or fault-tolerant servers that really pack a punch. I know the fault-tolerant servers proudly promote 99.999 of uptime. So if it's critical and it's control room and you want to utilize ThinManager, there's a good partnership right there to make sure your plant keeps on going. Thank you very much for your time, everyone. Highly appreciate it. That's all the questions we have in the chat. Thank you for your time, and this webinar will be released and sent out, as I said, a link via email to yourself who have registered and also on the NHP YouTube channel. Thank you very much and have a great day. Cheers.